Girlies, 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 welcome back. It's very cold. 'Tis the season of change. I'm sat here in my bloody fleece, guys. It's a bit bloody nippy. How are we all feeling? Welcome back to episode 4 of the Weekly Wigz pod with me, your host, Megan Wigz. Thank you very much for joining me again. We're churning out. We are churning out the eps. We're getting into the flow. We're getting there. We've had a bit of a meh the last few weeks. Some things technical-wise on Spotify and the platforms that I use have really been causing me a bit of bloody ag. I can't remember if I already detailed that in the last episode, so sorry if I'm repeating myself. But yeah, as I've said before, I am a new girlie on the block. This is all a learning curve. This is all new to me. I'm getting back into the flow. It's been fun. It's a challenge. It's all of the things, right? But God, these platforms. Do you know what it is? I think the problem I'm discovering is podcasting is obviously pretty rife these days, right? There's a lot of podcasters out there. The market's probably pretty saturated in some senses. And there's so many places for competition. Like, who knew all this stuff? There's so many platforms for you to upload your podcast, and there's all sorts of different benefits, and there's monthly payment plans, and upload this amount of... Oh, I've just realised I'm looking rather luminescent with this little ring light. Maybe I should turn it down a little bit. Don't mind me. Okay, is anyone else seeing this on the camera? Why is that so luminescent? It's giving Halloween, spooky. I'm a vampire. Yeah, anyway, I've just been discovering that there's just so many elements to the podcasting world, and it can be quite overwhelming trying to understand as a newbie, not done it before professionally, and trying to figure out, what is the right platform? What do you even use to distribute your pod? Trying to get to grips with all the new social clips and trying to market your podcast. It's just a whole thing. And I've been learning a little bit about copyright and copyright music and all this kind of stuff. So she got a little bit savvy and worked her magic on GarageBand, which is a software that you can create music on. So I've now created my own little jingle sound for the start and ending of this podcast. So hopefully that won't give me any issues going forward. But yeah, it's been a bit of a maze. But we're getting there. We're learning. And it's all part of the journey. So here we are. We are recording on Sunday, the 2nd of November. We're in November now. It is the run-up to Christmas officially. Can we believe it? We just got done with Halloween weekend. It's spooky vibes. It's very cold and grey and dark outside. I'm not here for this season change personally. I'm not a fan. I'm cold. I've got the fleece on. I've got my dressing gown on my lap. It's bloody cold. And yeah, I'm just... I'm definitely very prone to a bit of seasonal depression. I think there's quite a lot of people are prone to that. The seasons are tough in the UK. We get such a minimal summer, and I thrive in the summer. And then bloody winter comes around before we know it, and it's just like a period of about 4 to 5 months of complete grey, dark, rain, cold, and I'm just not here for it. I'm not here for it. I can usually survive up until about Christmas, because I think, do you know what? A little bit of cosy vibes, autumnal, get your pumpkins out, candles on, as you can see in the background. I don't mind a little bit of bonfire night. And then the Christmas markets. I'm generally down for those kind of season activities. But I'm just so sensitive to the cold. And the minute it starts raining and it's just wind and gale force winds and all the storms start coming around in the winter, I just think, sign me off, hen. I'd like to go to a tropical island, stat. But alas, we do not have the luxury or the budget to do that, if only. But yeah, it's been a bit of a busy old week. So a little bit of life admin, a little bit of a catch-up. I've had a nice week off work. Well, I've just finished an old job and I'm starting a new job tomorrow. Ooh! So I had a little week off of just reset. You know that kind of time between jobs. You just want to have a little bit of a mental reset, a little bit of a break. Would have loved to have gone on a nice hot holiday somewhere, but again, we didn't have the money for that. So I had a little bit of a UK staycation kind of vibe. One part of moving up to Manchester and moving up north, which is quite exciting, is getting to explore a lot of new areas that I've never really visited before. So she went on some little day trips because Manchester's a pretty good hub for train stations and there's loads of different routes you can go up north, like over to Yorkshire, you can go to Liverpool, you could go to Newcastle. Like there's so many, obviously, sections of the UK up north that you can explore. And I've done a few of them in my last year or so of living here, but we've still got quite a few to tick off. So I went to a really cute place called Haworth. I think that's how you pronounce it. I thought it was Hayworth. You spell it Haworth. So I guess up north they call it Haworth. It was a really, really nice place. It was like stepping back in time to the Victorian era. Really beautiful sort of cobbled streets. It was quite a small place. There's not much there. It was just this sort of long high street that had loads of cute little old style houses, like loads of little trinket shops. It had an old post office there. It's actually home to the famous Bronte sisters, who were these famous authors back in the day who wrote like Jane Eyre, that kind of stuff. So there was lots of historical landmarks there, shall we say, like the old post office that the Bronte sisters would have sent their manuscripts from, or the old stationery shop that the Bronte sisters used to go to, things like that. But it was so cute, and I guess the little village is known for really going off on the decorations for Halloween time, and like everyone's little houses had pumpkins and stuff outside, and it was just gorgeous. And it's set obviously in like the Pennines of Yorkshire, and it's just gorgeous views. And you go up this little cobbled hill street, and then you can look down over the beautiful like luscious green mountains of Yorkshire, and it was very pretty. Cute little bakeries there, little bookshops, like it was a true vibe. So if that's your kind of thing, would thoroughly recommend Haworth. And then another place I went to in Yorkshire was a place called Harrogate. That was a bit like Bath. If anyone's ever been to Bath, it's like a spa town. I learned all about Harrogate's history. It was a great little spot. They had this like mini museum there called the Royal Pump Room. It was literally like one single room. It cost me £4. Best money I've ever spent in a museum. And it was just essentially saying the history of what brought people to Harrogate, and that it was a spa town. And a lot of people would escape to the Yorkshire spa towns for a bit of leisure. Back in the day, it used to be more of a medicinal like cure for if people didn't feel well. It was called the cure. So all the travellers, if they could afford it back then, they would take themselves and have like a prescription-based weekend of full treatments in the spas, relaxation in the baths. Like it was like they, at that time, because medicine hadn't progressed so much, that was like the cure to all their ailments and their health problems. So quite interesting to learn about that. It was a gorgeous little town, loads of lovely little hotels. Like you could so stay there for the night and have like a cute little evening away. It's home to the famous Betty's Tea Rooms if you like a bit of afternoon tea. They're famous for making these really nice baked goods called Fat Rascals. They're a little bit like a scone, but like smushed down to almost looks like a cookie, but it's tastes and it's crumbly like a scone, and it's got almonds and cherries on it. Oh, perfection. Very, very nice. So yeah, she's just been wandering around the place. I've been just chilling in my flat, popping into town, just like really mooching around, really. I will say it was a bit chaotic. I annoyingly timed my time off during the half-term holidays. Ooh, school kids everywhere. Manchester is obviously a very big, busy city, which I'm used to for the most part, but it does ramp up during half-term. Oh my God. Every time I stepped on a tram, it was just like wall-to-wall, kids, families, people everywhere. I was like, oh my God, go away. Such a grumpy ass. But I was like, I need my peace, okay? I'm on my week off. I'm trying to relax here. I just want to like toot around like everyone else. But no, it was a bit chaotic at times. So yeah, she's feeling a little tired at the end of this week, but we're chilling out on this Sunday, ready and rocking and rolling to start a new job tomorrow. Last night I spent binge watching the new series of Selling Sunset. Any reality TV fans out there? I will say, reality TV for me, bit hit and miss. I don't watch tons of it. I feel like we're saturated with reality TV these days. There's a bit too much to choose from, but one of my solid go-tos is Selling Sunset. I love that shit. I grew up watching The Hills, okay? And if you ever watched The Hills on MTV, you will appreciate Selling Sunset. It's created by the same guy that made The Hills, so it's got a really similar format It's obviously a bit lightly scripted, but it's so juicy. I love Selling Sunset. So yeah, I've been binge watching Netflix, had a lovely little week off, little mental reset. I did have a bit of beef to take up with my neighbours this past weekend. Oh! And this actually is what is going to sort of segue us into today's pod topic, which will be around drinking and sober and clubbing and all this stuff, right? Because I'm so sorry, tell me why the Gen Zers of today, okay, this epidemic of Gen Zers not really going to the clubs, it's very bloody real. And let me just say, okay, I live in a block of flats, and I've always lived in blocks of flats generally in my adult age, and I enjoy it. Like, I like the communal feel of being in a block of flats. I like being high up, especially in the city, like you get a cool view. It's great for people watching. Like, there's just a nice feel to me when, especially as someone who lives on their own, like, I enjoy having the community feel of a block of flats and a block of people around you. Obviously, it comes with its cons, mainly noise things half the time because you're obviously in close proximity to other people. And yeah, this weekend, there were these bloody neighbours who I think are quite new here. They might be renters, but they were partying it up for Halloween. Absolutely fine. Love that for you. They were screaming out to bloody Feminine On, where it was called, by Chapel Roan. But it was like 2:30 in the morning. I was like, girlies, just go to the club. Like, please go to the club. That's what it's there for. And I was kind of just observing them, and I was like, oh my God, this is the thing now, isn't it? This is the new generation of young people who really don't be going out to clubs all that much. They stay indoors. They like the house parties. And don't get me wrong, I used to love a house party when I was like 15, 16, 17, because the truth of the matter is that's what we had at that age, you know? That was the options that was given to you because you couldn't exactly go to the club that underage, could you? I felt like house parties were relevant to the time, you know? But now that just seems to be out of the window because a lot of Gen Zers and young people really don't like the clubs. And it's very apparent in the statistics that we see these days. So, I mean, we see it in the news all the time. I was actually just looking up an article now on the BBC, and it says that in the last 5 years, around 400 clubs have closed in Britain, which is more than a third of the total number. That's mad. Isn't that mad? And I know there's like a lot of factors to that in terms of the economy, post-pandemic, hospitality's like really struggling, like restaurants, bars, all of it. But I think a really large part and cause of it is this sort of, they call it the rise of sober curiosity. I found this interesting article. It's called a website called theconversation.com. The rise of sober curiosity, why Gen Zers are reducing their alcohol consumption. Members of Gen Z consume about 1/3 less of beer and wine than previous generations. They are also shifting towards alcohol-free beverages at a significantly higher rate. And I can believe that for sure, because you see it so much now. Obviously, you've got the club shutting down. No one's really interested in going anymore. I put a little video up on TikTok the other day, just kind of having my little rant, like, I wish you Gen Zers would take your ass to the clubs. Like, I just want to sleep. Stop it with your house parties. And a few people came back on the comments and they were just like, yeah, but the thing is, like, we don't want to go to the clubs anymore, mainly because we don't feel safe and also because they're too expensive. And I was like, honestly, valid. And I hear you, like, I so hear you. But also, like, realistically, we can't just be having, like, house rages in communal blocks of flats where people live till, like, 3, 4 in the morning. Like, it's not a bloody club. Do you know what I mean? It's mad to see the transition because that was such a huge part of growing up. Like, when you turned 18, it was a rite of passage. It was like, yeah, like, we get to go to the club now. Like, we're legally 18. We're allowed to do it. And I always remember just feeling such a sense of almost not desperation, but like real excitement to be able to do that. And because I was born in July and I was like one of the babies of the years, I always got so mad because I could never get into clubs like before all my other friends who turned 18 before me. And it was really hard to kind of like borrow fake IDs and that kind of stuff. So my yearning for like going to the club was pretty high when I was at that age. And we all loved it. We always went to the club, whether it was someone's birthday or it was like a school night out, or then obviously, you know, you go into the uni years. Like, clubbing is just such a huge part of most people's young experience when it comes to drinking and socialising. So to think that that's not necessarily the way it goes now is quite interesting. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing in terms of like the sober curiosity thing, because as someone who is #sober, I'm all for health and wealth. And I will say, I do think, well, maybe it's just a British thing because it's our culture, but like, we definitely do have a binge drinking problem in this country, like for real. And I mean, I look back now and I have these conversations sometimes with like family members or people who are older, and like I've had a chat with my mum in the past about like, when you were young and you were out getting drunk, like were you out there like ripping shots, like having Jaeger bombs like people my generation were having? And they weren't. Like it was a very different time. I think the sort of boomer generation would have really grown up in rugby clubs and working men's clubs and local pubs. And yeah, they probably would have had like nights out at clubs in the city, but I don't think it was as common, because I felt like being a millennial, like my experiences of drinking really went from like 0 to 100 very quick. The first time I ever had a drink was when I was about 15. I was theoretically a bit later than my peers having drinks. I felt like some people wanted to have drinks at 13, 14, which does seem really young, but I guess kids and teenagers, they just want to experiment, don't they? But I was always a little bit hesitant for a while. And then I think when we were sort of 15, 16 and people started inviting you to like house parties, it kind of felt like, well, maybe I should try it, see what happens. And I can remember my first ever house party was a girl from school, and it was just like at her house. And to be fair, all of these house parties that we ever had were all like pretty sensible and supervised. Like parents generally were there, or they would go out for an hour or two and then come back. We weren't having like Project X house rages like you probably imagine in America, but they were fairly innocent. And like the first ever drink that I like ever properly had was a Smirnoff Ice. Do you know what I mean? Like back then that felt like a big deal, but if you had that now, you'd think you were just drinking pop. I can literally remember it so clearly. I obviously probably would have, asked my parents, like, can I go to my friend's house party? Are we allowed to drink? And my parents, to be fair, I think took the right approach with drinking. Like they weren't too strict about it. They didn't try and be like, no, like you're not drinking, you're too young. Because I think parents probably understand that, teenagers are going to do it and you can't really stop them. And if anything, I personally think it's better to just be a bit more cool about it. Don't make it a big deal, but at the same time, obviously setting the boundaries and giving a sensible warning that like, okay, we're probably not going to chuck you on the hard spirits and the shots of vodka from the age of 15. And of course they didn't. And I never wanted to at that age. Like I had no interest. I think I was so hesitant, having not drank before. I don't think it was even in my sphere to think of having like shots and Jaeger bombs and all the harder stuff at that age. So I actually think maybe my brother got it for me. It was either my brother or my mum. The allowance was a 4-pack of Smirnoff Ice, like the small ones, came in a little thing of 4. It's quite funny. Looking back now, that's like nothing in it. Like the percentage of alcohol in Smirnoff Ices are not a lot. But that was my permitted allowance, and what I was allowed to take to the party with me was my 4 little Smirnoff Ices. And to be fair, at the party then, obviously everyone brings their own drinks. I think the parents had like provided some Strongbows or some ciders in like a ice bucket or whatever. So that night, I recall having my 4 Smirnoff Ices. She's crazy. And I think maybe like 1 or 2 Strongbows for the first time, like Strongbow and blackcurrant. And I think that obviously would have been my first time experiencing some form of drunkenness or tipsiness. But it didn't affect me all that much, to be honest. And I think this is where I learned from a young age that I was quite a heavyweight, shall we say, in drinking. Some people obviously are complete lightweights and it takes them like 2 drinks to get drunk. I was never given that blessed gene. Well, some might argue it's not a blessed gene to have, but it definitely made your life cheaper, that's for sure. It was quite annoying not being able to feel like a level of drunk when everyone else before you was like, woo! And you're there on like your 5th drink, like, I don't feel anything, like what's going on? And that theme kind of followed me throughout life, more on that later. But yeah, it was all just very innocent initially, like 15, 16, 17. These were the years of house parties. I wasn't probably having anything too crazy. Like I said, it was Smirnoff Ices, WKDs, and at absolute most, it was a bit of cider. I don't recall any of the house parties I ever went to that we were actually drinking like full vodka and spirits. I don't think anyone was. Maybe it's just that all of our parents probably recognise that, like, hey, you're not quite ready for that hard stuff yet. Maybe when you go to the club, then that'll change. And that is what happened. Then you started going to the clubs at like 17, 18. My first time in a nightclub was at the age of 17. Was I on a fake ID? Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Allegedly, nobody knows. Do you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, even prior to like proper club, I think I technically was still going to like bars that kind of turned into clubs in the nighttime when I was maybe 17. The big like night out place for me, based on where I lived, was Cardiff, right? Like Cardiff's the big city and has all the real proper nightclubs. And that's where you like went out for a big night out, right? On the sesh. But prior to that, it was more like local hometown kind of villages and places. Some of them had pubs. Like a place called Bridgend is where I used to kind of first start drinking. And I think, truthfully, the only reason we really went there is because it used to be kind of easy to go into bars. You would basically go before, like, the late night clubbers came out. So we would go kind of early to one of these bars where they didn't ID you to go in at, say, like 7 p.m. Because it was one of those, like, bit like a Spoons. It was like a Wetherspoons where they did food and had a bar. And then basically from, say, like 11 p.m. up until about 2 a.m. max, it would sort of turn into a quote-unquote nightclub, and they'd play music, have a DJ, and a bit of a dance floor. So we would go in early, have food there, and at that time there would be maybe one or two friends in the friend group that were 18 and could essentially buy us all our drinks. And it's like, these bars knew we were doing that, but like they didn't care, because as long as you were in the establishment, I don't think they really cared. It was whoever was going to the bar and purchasing the drinks. So if they got ID'd, it was fine. So that was my probably first experience of like being out in proper bars / clubs, but it was just more on a local level. And we didn't often actually stay out that late, often because of just like logistics of having to like get your parents to come and pick you up and not necessarily being allowed to stay out super late at that age. Round about that age, not everyone in my friend group would have had a car or would have been driving. So you're still sort of in this limbo of trying to rely on having to get lifts from your parents or get the last train home. So you couldn't often go like all out on like a full club night. Weirdly enough, my first real experience of that would have actually been abroad in Ibiza. She went on an Ibiza girlies trip when I was 17. This was in the summer after we'd finished school, finished sixth form, all of that done. And then it was the summer waiting to go to uni. I was still 17. Hilariously enough, at the time, I was like worried that I wasn't going to be able to get into all these clubs in Ibiza. I thought, oh, I'm like technically underage. Is that going to be a problem? Obviously in Spain, they don't give a shit. They're like, yep, just come on in. We'll take all the underage punters. I can actually remember specifically asking the travel agent at the time, like, I'm actually, like, out of the entire group. I'm the only one that's going to be 17 when we're there. Like, do you think that's going to be a problem? She was like, no, girl, like, it's absolutely fine. You'll have no problem. I'm there in all the bloody Ibiza clubs, pouring drink down my neck. Woo! Living my best life. So that was, God, talk about, like, an opening into real clubbing. The fact that I literally did Ibiza holidays before I even did real proper nightclubs in this country is kind of wild. Ibiza is an absolutely feral place. Oh my God, going there one time was more than enough for me. I think I realised at a young age that I did not have the stamina to do like 7 entire days of pure binge drinking. We were having absinthe. Has anyone ever had absinthe? That shit is the devil's poison. Oh my God, it's enough to just like knock you out on the floor. I don't know what they put in that shit, but it was crazy. And you know what it's like on these like girls' summer holidays. Things just get messy. You just drink every day into oblivion. You hangover out your ass the next day, and it's just repeat the cycle. And I did find that week very challenging. I did not have the stamina or the strength to be like, let's keep going. Like, I remember being on the flight back, just like, no one talked to me. Nobody talked to me. So yeah, that was a real taster of like, okay, this is going to be kind of your life for the next like potentially 5 to 10 years of just being young and clubbing and drinking and going out to the bars. And so roll around, of course, uni life. That's when the clubbing was really regular. Actually, do you know what? I'm having a bit of a brain fart here. I'm thinking back. I might be totally wrong. Do you know what? I'm actually thinking I must have gone to a club in Cardiff before Ibiza, actually, now that I think about it. Oh, it's really hard to remember the timelines. Oh my God, wait. Oh my God, how can I not mention this story? No, I lie. I completely lie. I did go to a club before that Ibiza holiday. I still would have been 17 and underage. I think I had a fake ID. This was for like a school bonding party thing that we had. And it was my first night out in Cardiff ever, like a real big club night. First time experiencing that post like all the Bridgend bars. And oh my God, the mortification of this evening. Long story short, she came away from that night with a broken foot. Oh, I never lived that down. Everyone ripped into me in school. It was the worst time in school for that to happen. It was such a big deal at the time. It's like, oh my God, we're all going out for the first time. So many of us out that night, like majority of the school year would go to this event, right? Everyone gets a minibus. We all travel into Cardiff together. It's like a whole thing. And it was all so innocent. It was so innocent. It was just, I'm 18. No, sorry, I'm 17. We're just in the club for the first time. You're doing a bit of a club crawl. And then in the final club, I think it literally was within like the last hour of the evening before we were getting picked up at the minibus, I had such an innocent fall. It was some like stupid drama where someone I knew was like getting kicked out by the bouncer because they were too drunk. And I, in my innocent, helpful self, was trying to help them, and I sort of ran after them. And as I ran, it was just an innocent fall where there was a stupid black door, like painted black, in the middle of the dance floor, and it was really hidden and you couldn't tell that there was a step next to the door. Anyway, I go flying down the step, fully break my foot, obviously don't know this at the time. I stand up so quickly and put all my weight on the foot, which made it worse. And then within 10 minutes of me falling, I'm sat on the little table or wherever in the club, and my foot starts swelling like a balloon. I was in so much pain. I'm obviously a bit drunk, but I wasn't like paralytic out of my mind. I'm emotional. I'm a shambles. I'm like, my foot hurts so much. I think I've broken it. I can't even wear the shoe on it. I'm walking around without shoes. I've got schoolmates like hobbling me over to the minibus by the end of the night. It was a complete disaster. In my head, the entire time I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. They're going to think, my parents are going to think I've like been fighting or been doing crazy stuff. Because do you know what? At that age, I was also so accident prone. I was so clumsy. I kind of low-key still am, but not as bad as when I was younger. And I was always injuring myself. And I just thought, oh, not again. They're going to just roll their eyes at me. And so in my head, I came up with this complete concocted story that I didn't even need to do because it was genuinely not my fault. It was such an innocent fall. But for some reason, I just thought I was going to be on the chopping block. So in that minibus ride home, I'm like, I got to come up with a story. My mum's about to pick me up on the other end when we get dropped off in the minibus. So my story was that some big burly man, they were fighting behind me and one of them pushed me and then I fell and twisted my ankle. I mean, I don't think my parents believed me for a second. They probably thought I was just being stupid, but I should have just been honest from the jump. Why I didn't do that, I don't know. Anyway, fast forward a few hours. My mum picks me up, bless her, in the middle of the night. Go back home. I think my dad was like away on work, so it was just me and my mum. She can probably see my foot at this point, like a full balloon swollen. But I'm like, I'm just tired. It's 3 a.m. Let's just go to bed and just see what happens in the morning. Not me thinking it'll just disappear in the morning. Unsurprisingly, about 4 hours later, when I wake up at about 7 a.m. in absolute agony, I'm going, Mum, my foot is hurting so much. I think we need to go to the hospital. It's straight to A&E. Long story short, she gets a big cast on her foot for like the next 3 months. It was sad times. I was off school for a little while. But of course, you can imagine the entire school year are all talking about the fact that, oh my God, Megan broke her foot on the night out. Teachers used to make fun of me when I came back to school. I had one of those boot things, like a little boot that you put over a cast so you can actually walk a bit better. They used to laugh at me in the corridor. It was devastating, absolutely devastating. So yeah, we had some messy nights. Drink, the whole environment, clubs, drinks, it's all a bit of a mess. So to a degree, I can understand why the Gen Zers of today maybe want to avoid it. But, I guess it's all part of life experience, isn't it? When you're younger, these are all the silly things that happen. And so, yeah, anyway, so shoot back. Sorry, my timeline's a bit all over the place at the minute. So we've got the house parties with the Smirnoff Ices and the bloody Strongbows. Then there was like a little era of like bars in Bridgend, which weren't really proper clubs. Then there was fake IDs, first night out in town, broke my foot. So then there was no nights out really for the rest of that time. Then it became harder to get people's IDs. Then I think it was that Ibiza trip that was my next big foray into clubbing and drinking. And then after that, it was straight to uni. Now, you will have known from my uni episode that I did last week. Was it last week or the week before last? I think it's episode 2, actually. I had a bit of an experience in university, a lot of ups and downs. I went through like a real mental health crisis. And a lot of it was spurred on by drink. Didn't realise this till much later on. But this is where part of my drinking came to a stop, was towards the end of my uni life. I think this was in third year. I did mention on that episode that I was struggling a little bit in third year with like panic attacks. I think it was mainly around the stress of just the workload I had at that time. I'd had some obviously previous years of mental health issues, so it was probably just lingering from that time as well. Healing takes a long time, obviously, when you go through traumatic things and have problems with your mental health. So I think I came to a point in my third year, not that I was really doing much drinking or partying at all in that year, because I was so focused on all the work I had to do. But I think anytime I did, I felt like it just exacerbated any type of panic attack or just bad feelings I felt. So for just mental health reasons, I actually do recall stopping drinking for a good year or two. Majority of my third year, and then that also seeped into when I turned 21. I did say the story on that episode about when I went to Camp America and I had this 21st birthday party and all this kind of stuff. And I wasn't drinking at that time either. I would still sometimes go out on nights out and clubs and stuff with my friends, but I just chose not to drink on them. I'm not going to lie, I used to find it quite frustrating during that period because friends just would not be able to accept the fact that I didn't want to drink. And if I'm being honest, that's the one thing I would probably praise the Gen Zers for today, is that they seem to be a generation that are very open and tolerable to the fact that, hey, if you don't want to drink, we don't fucking care, hun. I mean, hey, if there's any Gen Zers listening to this, I'd love to hear your perspective of, is that actually the case? That's what it looks like to me from the outside as a millennial. I don't get the impression that there's much judgment about whether you do or don't drink, but I feel like as a millennial, I felt more judgment for not being a drinker. And sometimes I think it's just this, is it called an unconscious bias type of thing? They don't necessarily mean to, but because we're just raised in this drinking culture from such a young age, it was almost like some friends just couldn't fathom the fact that I could even face a night out or be confident in a club and want to dance without the Dutch courage or the drink. And I just never understood that because I thought, I think that's actually a bit sad. If you feel like you can't have a night out or enjoy yourself without drink, then that's probably saying more about your own self-esteem. And I remember loads of people, in uni days, used to say that. They were like, oh my God, I would never dance. I would never do that unless I was really drunk. And I used to find that quite sad and think, wow, you have to really be masking something to feel that you can't be confident without alcohol. And so I think my questions around drinking and alcohol definitely existed for quite some time. But then I went in and out of it. I think sometimes, depending on what part of life you're in, certain social pressures or social situations or your circumstances can really influence whether you decide to drink or party or club. And I think when I was in third year uni and I was in that phase where I had to move back with my parents, it probably felt very natural and easy for me to stop drinking at that time. Because it was so infrequent in terms of nights out and I was so focused on my work, it didn't massively bother me and I enjoyed not drinking. But then a year or so later, when I entered sort of the real adult working world and started living with a flatmate and then meeting loads of people through jobs, that's when like social life opportunities started to ramp up again. And not that I was like desperately missing drinking, but I think there's just this social norm that you feel when you're in those settings that like, oh, well, everyone else is drinking around me again. And I mean, hey, I've had like a long enough break now. I feel like mentally okay. I'm doing a lot mentally better. Like maybe I can just try it again. And that's basically what I did when I was in my call centre era. You'll know from previous episodes, I went through a whole list of all the different careers and jobs and places that I've been through. Call centre, I mean, there's so many people that work in call centres, a lot of young people, quite a big turnover of people, and there was always some sort of social activity going on. And I was back living in the city, back in my own independence and freedom, making some money now, and I can afford to do the clubs and go out and drink and all the rest of it. And so that's when I got back into drinking again. And for the most part, it was fine. Like, I had lots of probably fun nights out throughout those years to follow. But one thing I started to notice, and this was, I mean, we're going now from like, the timeline here would be stopped drinking for the first time, I think 2014, and probably restarted somewhere in 2016, something like that. And so from 2016 up until 2022, that was a period of time where I used to drink in my life. So that's like a 7-year period. So during all of those times, I think I have some fun memories of all sorts of random nights out, work nights out, birthdays, all of it. And I'm sure I had many a fun time. I mean, you go out so much, it's hard to remember all the different nights out. But I think towards the latter end of those 7 years, I started to feel like a lot of my nights out became a lot more messier. And to be honest, they weren't that frequent. I think just when you get into adult world and then you start moving jobs and maybe you're moving apartments and there's all sorts of changes going on, sometimes your social circle can change quite a lot during that time. And so nights out weren't as super frequent as they would have been back in like the uni days, right? Or the school days. And I think because of that, because they were so infrequent, I always felt like whenever I did have a night out coming up, that it was like, oh, this is about to be like the big night out. Let's go hard or go home. And again, because she's a heavyweight in drinking, it was like I would just be drinking so much that it's not a surprise that it would get really messy by the end of it. And, it's nothing like too serious. I'm talking very just menial things here, but like losing your keys or like losing your phone or being sick the next day or just like silly things that happen to you when you're drunk. But I think it was getting to a point for me where it just wasn't cute anymore. And I do recall hilariously enough, the straw that like broke the camel's back for me is Spain. I blame Spain, Josie, Spain, you know. These drink measurements that they used to do in these clubs in Spain. My friend lives in Barcelona, so when I'd go visit, we'd often have like one of the nights that I was staying there as like a night out. But the absolute savage drink measurements that the Spanish, like I'm talking, the cup is like 3/4 vodka and a splash of Fanta lemon if you're lucky. And I used to get so drunk and so messy on those nights. And like, it's just some of it not cute. Like, okay, we all do silly things when they're drunk, but I would just be having like a meltdown or crying over nothing or just making like a real mess of myself. And I used to feel like complete death after those nights out. I don't know how I got through the remainder of the trip. Josie girl, how did we do that? But it was getting too much. And there was a night out in 2022 and it was a trip to Barcelona and I was just a complete mess. And I recall, and this was becoming like quite a norm now, like we were getting like 3-day hangovers, which is just not normal. And so it kind of shifted from really mental health reasons more into physical reasons. And maybe this was just like, I'm pushing 30 at this point. And I just couldn't do it anymore. My body was rejecting it. And sometimes I wasn't even having nights necessarily where I was heavy drinking all the time. It kind of felt like any time I would drink, whether it was like a couple drinks or a lot of drinks, I just felt like ass the next day. And for many days after it. And obviously the mental health aspect of it comes to play. Like, it does make you feel just a bit depressed and anxious the next day. Like, that's literally what alcohol does. It's an antidepressant. Like, I think it was just an accumulation of reasons over the years as to why I just realised that, like, drink is just not for me. And so 2022 came around, had my last big jaunt in Spain, and I came home and I was just like, I think I'm done. I think I'm so done with drinking. Like, I just really don't want to do it anymore. And that's basically been my life ever since. And what we're in now, 2025, it's been a good 3 years. I've maybe in that time had like 1 or 2 drinks on one birthday. And I actually, to be perfectly honest, I've always regretted even bothering to drink even 2 drinks during those occasions. Because I've always thought, what was the point of that? I just spent like 20 quid on a crappy cocktail. Didn't feel anything. I literally would have been happier having a crispy Diet Coke with ice and a lemon wedge. I've actually, even throughout all of these years of drinking heavy and not drinking that much, I have never in my entire life been one of those people that has drunk in my house. Like, you know, some people will have like a glass of wine on a Friday night with their takeaway or something. And some people enjoy the art of like making a cocktail or having a little house party or a shindig. But I've just never been that kind of person. There's actually majority of alcohol I don't even like. I hate wine. I hate beer. I hate most spirits. I only ever used to drink things that just tasted fruity, like a Strongbow fruit or a Copperberg fruit or like a Cosmopolitan or a Porn Star Martini or something silly like that. Like, I just never actually took enjoyment outside of nights out of even just appreciating an alcoholic drink. It's never been my bag. I think it's probably quite natural as you get to your 30s onwards. Like, some people will still continue to drink and some people will have an occasional night out. But I know a lot of people now, actually, in my age range, who are not that interested in going clubbing anymore. Like, most of my friends don't bother anymore. And maybe that just comes with maturity and growth and your interests and all the rest of it. But I think those days of like getting paralytic and just doing crazy shit is kind of for your 20s to get it out your system and call it a day, you know? But I mean, I guess these days, what are the young 20s doing? Like, if they're not going to the club and some of them are sober curious, what is their alternative? Are they having like wholesome little just nights in and chats and playing games? Are they foodies? Do they prefer going to the restaurants? Like, what's the tea? I need to know, Gen Zers. Reach out to me, please. I think it's obviously sad to see the demise of nightclubs and hospitality and the world of entertainment and live music and all the rest of it. But I guess the times shift, you know, the trends shift. There are actually a lot more sort of sober bars these days. Not that many of them, but I've seen a few of them pop up. Like, there was one in Manchester recently. And it is kind of cool that, like, it gives the opportunity for different spaces for people, because that is definitely not something that existed in my times. Like I said, very high pressured for you to be always drinking, binge drinking culture, sober, who is she? Like, no one was talking about sober curiosity at that time. Like I said, I think there was just a lot of judgment about if you didn't drink. And maybe that's just a UK thing, I'm not really sure, but it's very, very ingrained into our culture, isn't it, drinking? Like, pubs, such a British thing, pint of Guinness, all of it. But I am definitely here for the sober curious. I do personally believe that your mind and body are a lot better off without alcohol. I think that's just common sense. But then at the end of the day, like, people like to let their hair down and just enjoy a social aspect of it, don't they? I think overall, I'm very glad I stopped drinking, because the benefits mainly to my mental health more than anything is, I think, the best thing I could have done. There were definitely far too many times when I was younger where I really felt the impact on my mental health when I was heavily drinking. And a lot of that was obviously felt when I was younger in uni. And if you listen to the last few episodes, you'll know that story. But it just used to fuel on so much depression and anxiety and all these bad feelings. And it clearly, the chemicals in my brain did not mesh well with alcohol in excessive amounts. And that was my issue, is like, I felt like I wasn't able to just have a normal, regular drink or two because I was such a heavyweight with drinking. I always felt like I needed to drink loads to feel drunk. And then you would just go a step too far and drink too much. And it's like I wasn't able to figure out limits. And then on top of that, I think I just never really enjoyed alcohol anyway. So it's like I was probably just trying too hard to fit into the social norms and feel like I had to. And then it wasn't obviously till later in life that I was like, do you know what? I actually don't need to do this anymore. And I don't care. Like, I don't honestly care at this point if anyone's judging me because, like, respectfully, screw you. Maybe pandemic had something to do with it. Again, everything comes back to the bloody pandemic. I swear to God, I am going to do a full pandemic deep dive episode. It is so needed. But there's just so much shifted during that time. And probably personally for me, not only with just where I was at in life, what I wanted to do, I wanted to move away, all this stuff, right? And I think maybe drinking was a part of that. Like, we weren't going out to clubs then, so social life was like non-existent, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, like maybe it aided that decision slightly, but again, obviously I was still drinking in about 2022, but it was not much. It wasn't much drinking going on at that time. It is kind of mad though to think how much people spend on drink, and I have to say that was an element of it for me back when I was considering to stop drinking for like the second time. I was getting so sick of how much I was spending on nights out. Even if we were going to Spoons and we were going to the cheaper places, it would all bloody add up. Nightclub fees, taxis, the pre-drinks, like, oh my God, you would spend sometimes nearly like between £50 to £100 on a night out. That's insanity. That's literal insanity. I can't even imagine what it must cost now with the cost he lives and the increase in prices. And that's obviously probably why the people responded to my TikTok the other day were like, girl, it's too expensive. And I can bloody believe that. Because I've been out to a few bars in Manchester, like pubs just in the day or whatever. And you know, some of these places are charging like £7 a pint these days. £7 for a pint. I think it's even more in London. And it's like, I know that's city prices or whatever, but that's ludicrous. You used to be able to go to Spoons back in the day and maybe get like a pint of cider for about £3.50. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I do think the era of clubbing and drinking is definitely dying out. It's dying out with Gen Zers. It's also dying out, I think, with the cost of living crisis and the cost of everything and the demise of hospitality and bars and them trying to stay open. And then, of course, the introduction of sober options now. Like when you think you go into a supermarket and you go to an alcohol aisle, they have so many 0% non-alcohol alternatives now, don't they? Loads of those options. They never had that many options when I was younger. And to be perfectly honest, I don't truthfully give a shit about the non-alcoholic options. I personally find them quite pointless. I don't really understand what people gain from them. It like makes them feel like they're drinking something because it has the same flavour. But like, I never like the flavour of alcohol anyway, so like just give me a crispy Coke. I don't know, I personally don't understand it, but the options are there. They are endless now. Mocktail menus galore. You also see like sober raves, sober daytime raves, and I'm like so here for that actually, but it's such a different landscape now, isn't it, in 2025, and it's kind of crazy to see, just obviously for me personally, in the last 10 plus years, how that landscape has drastically changed. I mean, obviously, personally benefits me because I'm not interested in drinking anyway, but it almost feels like it's not cool to drink now, you know? Health and wellness, what it's all about. So yeah, interesting topics. But anyway, we're coming up to about an hour. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this entire drinking culture. Do you think the UK is too heavy on the drinking culture? Maybe if you're not listening in the UK, are you from elsewhere? What's it like in your country? Maybe other European places? What's the deal? Are you a Gen Zer? Would love to know if you're a Gen Zer, because I need to try and understand your psyche here, okay? What are the core reasons? Is it because it's too expensive? Is it because it's just more normal and acceptable that you don't have to drink anymore? Safety. Now, safety is an interesting point. Few people said that in my TikTok video. They're like, we just don't feel safe. And that kind of makes me sad, actually, because don't get me wrong, nights out in the dark hours of the night is not always been the safest place. I've certainly been in situations when I used to club as a young girl and think, oh my God, that was really dangerous. Like, stick together, girls. Like, that's kind of always existed, really. But, like, is crime getting worse on nights out? Like, what's the deal? I wonder if there's statistics behind that. Let me Google it. Has nighttime crime got worse in UK, maybe? Okay, Google's telling me it's difficult to state definitively whether nighttime crime as a whole has gotten worse across the entire UK, as trends do vary by crime type and location. Key points from recent statistics in England and Wales. up until March 2025 indicate long-term perspective, crime survey for England and Wales shows that overall violent crime has fallen dramatically over the past 2 decades. Interesting. Total recorded crime. Overall UK crime rate saw a slight increase, 1.8%, from the period ending August 24 to August 25, largely driven by a significant increase in fraud offences. Oh, interesting. Violent crime, total number of violent incidents show no significant change in the most recent years. Specific nighttime-related crimes, robbery decreased by 3%. Alcohol-related incidents, now this is what we're looking at. A vast majority of violent incidents that occur over the weekend happen at night, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Alcohol-related, well, yes, we know that. Anecdotal evidence from sources like the nighttime industries suggests rising crime rates generally cast a shadow over their operations. Oh, this is all very, contradictory. I can't quite... Okay, maybe, Google is not the way to find this information. Maybe I'll do this off camera for another day, but yeah, I do wonder, is that, a large element of it? Do people just not feel so safe anymore going out? It's an interesting one. It's a very interesting topic that does pique my interest. As someone who has been through their own drinking journey and has no interest in that anymore and doesn't go out clubbing, it has been quite interesting to see this complete shift of the sober nation. It almost feels like I should have belonged in the sober nation. She's a trendsetter, what can I say? She was ahead of her time. But yeah, I don't know, it's very interesting. I think ultimately, if you want to drink and you feel safe, you can consume it safely, and it doesn't impact you physically or mentally in too drastic of a way, then you go for it, girlies. I mean, my parents still drink and they're in their 60s. They're obviously not out in the club, but they still enjoy a social drink with their friends and still feel hungover the next day. I think that doesn't ever go away. But if that's something that you feel you can handle in minimal amounts, then go for it. I feel like the takeaway message from this whole thing for me is don't feel pressured. If you don't like drinking and it doesn't fit with you, don't ever feel some social pressure by anyone that it's weird and that you're a loser, because you're not. You're actually taking active steps in trying to better yourself and your health, and that's not a bad thing, And you're not boring if you don't drink, okay? I've had some great sober nights out. I used to go on quite a few sober nights out where I would just have a bloody energy drink and be woo, life of the party. And I would still have more stamina and be the last one standing out of all the drunk people. Anyway, just let me know in the comments your thoughts on this topic in general. Do you drink? Are you a drinker? Are you a non-drinker? Where do we foresee the sober rise going? Will it just be a pendulum? Will it swing back to drinking again? I don't know. Maybe this is how it goes. Are we all going to be wellness beauty gurus for the foreseeable? And Pilates and yoga is the new social. Anyway, thanks again, gang, for tuning in with me this week. Do appreciate any of the support so far. Thanks for sharing and liking the episode. It does really help me. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, or follow on whatever platform you're listening to. We've got Spotify, Apple and YouTube. If you've got any fun topics of debate or anything of similar nature that you'd be interested in me talking about, do make some suggestions, and I will certainly be catching you on the next episode, my honeys. Bye bye.